So this is just a brief introduction of myself and my colleagues Emily and Christy Lee. We started with a whakatoki, ihara taku toa ite toa takitahi ingari he toa takitini, which basically translates to my strength is not that of a single warrior, but that of many. So we really wanted to acknowledge in this presentation the amount of work that has gone into this, not from just ourselves, but from the colleagues and the communities in particular who have supported us in this research. So I won't read this just because it's the introductions of my other colleagues as well, but just to summarize, it's just saying where we're from, iwi and hapu affiliations, and also just a summary of this research that's looking at assisting our communities to prepare them for the impacts of Rūaumoko, who's a Māori ancestor with influence over earthquake, volcanic and geothermal activity, as well as papawhenua, who's the personified form of the waters of earth and is associated with tsunamis. So this is just a summary of what the presentation is going to be covering today. So a bit of a background on the contemporary participation of Māori in the academic workforce, as well as a background on these projects and how they came to be. And then I'll be talking about 3 case study projects. So there's Te Hīkoi a Rūaumoko, which is Emily Campbell's project, which has been digitizing a bilingual pukapuka or book based on Ngāti Kahungunu pūrākau stories that relate to natural earthquake warnings and preparedness within their region. Te Kura Kaupapa, which is my project, which I've been working on with Kate Borson from East Coast Lab. And that's going to be looking at a bicultural approach to increasing tsunami and earthquake preparedness for kura akonga, or school students in the Hawke's Bay and actually Wellington region as well. And the final project I'm going to be talking about today is Christy Lee Thomas's work, which is looking at communicating historic and contemporary tsunami risk in Wharekauri-Rekohu, or the Chatham Islands. So after I present on these projects, I'm going to provide some of the lessons, both individually and collectively, that we learned while conducting our research projects, as well as just our experience working in sort of engineering, physical and social science academic systems. And then I'm going to finalise with some recommended paths forward that we've come up with to create a more inclusive and diverse academic field. So this project was funded using Vision Mātauranga funding from QuakeCoRE for 2018, completing in September this year. It's designed to be supporting the collaboration of emerging researchers, particularly Wāhine researchers in the field of seismic research. The idea was it would be a synthesis framing, telling a narrative around the approaches that we've been using, engaging with and collaborating with Māori communities and stakeholders for increasing earthquake resilience from the kura level, so the school level, all the way up to the kaumatua level, so our elderly. So this has consisted so far of a range of hui workshops and academic publications. So it supported our attendance at the QuakeCoRE AGM last year, the upcoming NZSEE conference, and the Pacific Risk Management Ohana conference later this year. It also supported our attendance at the hui that was held at Whakatu Marae last year by QuakeCoRE, which was a really important opportunity for us as emerging researchers to present our research back to a Māori audience and receive mentorship from prominent Māori researchers in the disaster research field. So we're really hoping there'll be more opportunities like this to come, and that we're able to widen our metaphorical net to grow our emerging Māori Wāhine network. So some of the key figures involved in this project are myself, Christy Lee and Emily, but we'd also like to acknowledge the support we've had from many other individuals such as Harmony Repia, Wendy Saunders, Christine Kenny, Kate Borson, David Johnson, and many others, including the community members who have tirelessly supported and participated in our research. So our research has really been coloured by our own positionality and experiences conducting our work, and also by other Indigenous and Māori researchers' experiences conducting research with and for their communities. Whānau wrote an excellent piece recently discussing how representation of Indigenous researchers in academia is really an international issue that we're facing as Indigenous people and also as academic institutions. So poor Indigenous representation in academia really gets exacerbated by the limited support structures that are available for meaningful, consent-driven and reciprocal engagement with Indigenous people. And this can really deepen perceptions that engagement and communication efforts regarding research are being performed in bad faith. And it's really hard to come back and regain the trust of communities if this has happened. The ramifications can really colour entire research programs and institutions negatively. So just a little bit of data that Christy Lee gathered for us. So physical science and engineering are among the fields which are graduating the lowest number of Māori tertiary students. In 2018, only 2% of 29,750 Māori tertiary students chose to complete science qualifications, and only 5% to complete engineering qualifications. There's been really little progress in increasing representation of Māori in the academic workforce in New Zealand, and only 2% of Māori tertiary students were completing physical science degrees in 2018. So yeah, increasing the diversity in science and technology fields requires more work on behalf of our institutions, but also we need to be looking at ourselves as researchers and the manner in which we're incorporating Māori knowledge, people and resources into the work we're producing. So this brings me to the first case study I'm going to be looking at today, which is Emily Campbell's work, Te Hīkoi a Rūaumoko. So Te Hīkoi Rūaumoko is a bilingual pukapuka or book based on Ngāti Kahununu's pūrākau stories and whakaaro thoughts and understanding that relate to hazards and preparedness within their rohi. So this was developed and piloted in the Hawke's Bay by a collaborative working group led by the Hawke's Bay Civil Defence and Emergency Management Group. Through this project, bilingual resources were produced to support early childhood education teachers to engage with tamariki or children and their whānau or families about earthquakes and tsunami within the Hawke's Bay area. So this pukapuka book was piloted with 6 early childhood education services ranging from kōhangareo, kindergarten and private early childhood education services. That was back in 2014. So lessons learned from this project were the basis for Emily's project, which has seen the printed resource digitized into an interactive pukapuka accessible on a range of devices. This will see Te Hīkoi a Rūaumoko traverse the traditional domain of a printed pukapuka to a sensory-based format needed for an online medium. The outcome will be the development of a technologically appropriate, community-based educational resource in pedagogy. So it's a bilingual children's pukapuka that's been digitised by a local Hawke's Bay working group, hoping to have it available online in April 2020, which they're so onto it, I'm sure it will be. It educates tamariki on what to do in a long or strong earthquake and tsunami. It's also, it uses te reo, but particularly focuses on some quite important Ngāti Kahungunu kupu or words, but the purpose was to have an audience of all kaiako teachers, families and tamariki children within New Zealand. So Emily's really kindly included a little sample of the book where it's at so far. So hopefully this plays. We don't appear to have the sound, but the book is narrated both in English and te reo. So you can click on different features within the pages that give you more information, particularly around pūrākau or traditional stories held by Ngāti Kahungunu. And that's an example of some of the preparedness information that pops up when you click on it. But it also has some beautiful music that's been composed by a local musician accompanying it. So I'm really excited to see what the final version of that will look like. So I think they're planning their final hui very soon, and that will be looking at user testing the online book and rolling it out to children within the area and around the country. So this brings me to the second project, which is my project, Te Kura Etai Aniwhariwha, or Schools and Tsunamis. So this was originally designed based on some online policy statements around the importance of engaging with Indigenous epistemologies. I should really learn how to say that before I start my PhD, and a greater inclusion of children's voices to increase disaster preparedness. Schools have, been recognised as playing a crucial role in raising awareness of disasters, safety and risk amongst students, teachers and parents. So this project was designed to pilot culturally appropriate educational activities for primary school and high school age students enrolled at Kura Kaupapa Māori-medium schools in the Hawke's Bay in Wellington. So this has been a project that me and Kate Borson have been working on for both parts of this project. The initial one was in Hawke's Bay, and it involved working with high school students to have them design educational activities to be carried out with a group of primary school age students around tsunami preparedness. The second iteration has been working with a kura in Seatoon with a class of 10 year 9 to 13 students. And so that's been about a term long project. We're currently in the middle of it right now. And that's more focused on Rūaumoko and earthquakes as well as tsunamis, but I'll talk a bit more about the specifics of that later. Here's just a little bit of a sample of the activity session lesson plan that we put together for our Hawke's Bay project. So it was really important to us to not just have Mātauranga Māori sectioned off in its own section, and to integrate Mātauranga Māori and Te Reo as much as we could throughout all of the lessons. It was very important as well that we engaged with the schools to make sure that their tikanga or cultural practices and processes were respected, and that we were able to fit into that in an appropriate manner. So yeah, the first session we did was learning about tsunamis. We had introductions, asked the students what they knew, what they wanted to know, and we used this information to try and structure the content for the rest of the lessons. As you'll see, the homework was a creative writing activity. We tried to utilise a range of different experiential activities throughout the program, so that hopefully if we weren't capturing everyone's attention all at the same time, we at least had a range of different activities for different student learning styles. We taught them about Māori environmental knowledge, about the Tsunami Resilient Kura framework, which was something we adapted from Mason Jury's Te Whare Tapa Wha framework, which it's about a holistic understanding of resilience, where you have 4 parts of a house of resilience, which is basically resilient mind, resilient spirit, resilient whānau, and resilient body. So it was important to, I suppose, get the students to think about resilience outside of just the physical advice or long, strong, get gone, and think about it in a more holistic manner. So after we had gone through a few learning sessions, we got them to develop a toolkit of activities to run with the primary school students in groups. And they had to complete an activity guide with step-by-step instructions to take to the school. So on the final day, we ran these activities with the children at the primary school, and we conducted a self-evaluation to find out what the students liked, disliked, and what they learned. So some of the activities the students came up with to run with the primary school students was building a tsunami resilient whare. So they had to build something that had to withstand shaking, and the one that withstood the longest and hardest shake won a prize. A grab and go bag resources. So we had, I think that's the image on the left, a range of different items to put in a grab and go bag, and the te reo kupu. So they had to identify what should and shouldn't go in a grab and go bag. A couple of the students created a rap that was bilingual about tsunami preparedness, and they taught that to the whole school, which was pretty cool. And then a couple of the groups designed a tsunami scavenger hunt where you needed to find information about tsunami preparedness in order to continue finding more clues, which eventually led to a prize. So we did student evaluations with the high school students. So we asked them, what's something new you've learned about over tsunami over the last 5 sessions? And so they really did remember a lot of the preparedness information, such as going and land, long and strong, get gone, what to put in a grab and go bag, evacuation zones, where to find hazard maps. So that was really encouraging. We asked them what's something they've learned while designing and carrying out their activity with the younger students. So they learned a lot about group dynamics, with how to work in groups, how to learn with kids, that kids learn easier through hands-on activities. And some of them who weren't a big fan of small kids actually came around and said that kids are really nice, and they actually had a really great time working with them. Overall, out of all the student evaluations we did, their favourite part of the project was going to the school to teach kids the activities. So it was really nice that they enjoyed that final part of the program. So Rūaumoko Kura Whenua is the project that we are currently doing in the Wellington region. So it's 1 to 2 hour session a week for term 1. And so we've been working hard on the lessons that we learned from the first Hawke's Bay iteration to make some improvements. So making sure we're incorporating more Te Reo terminology and Mātauranga Māori this time around. So we're going to have some segments that are entirely led in Te Reo, and will be, I think it's a session that we're going to have in Te Papa around the Rūaumoko haka. So that's a really great opportunity to have someone who can offer a session completely in Te Reo. We're going to be having field trips, one to a site of seismic importance, so the students are able to really experience and observe the changing whenua in the movements of Rūaumoko and para whenua mea, and just making sure we have a lot of interactive activities as we did last time, so that the students are engaged. But so far, both the teacher and the students have really enjoyed the program, and we're enjoying teaching it a lot. So looking forward to the remainder of this program. The final project I'm going to talk about is Christy Lee Thomas's work on communicating historic and contemporary tsunami risk in Wharekauri-Rekohu, which is the Chatham Islands. So this research is an extension of Christy Lee's MSc thesis, which she completed in 2017, and that consisted of a community-based participatory tsunami impact assessment that wove together Mātauranga Māori, local knowledge and scientific knowledge. In August 2018, the 150th anniversary of the 1868 Eureka tsunami occurred, and there was an opportunity to continue engagement and reciprocity with the community that had participated in Christy Lee's master's research. As a result, she co-organised a memorial event with iwi and civil defence. As the Māori community played a significant role in both the research and have a significant relationship with sites of significance that were affected by the 1868 tsunami, it was really important that the event abided by local tikanga and kawa, or cultural practices and customs. Resources were developed for the event and shared with the community. So you can see a postcard, which is the top image, which we circulated around. We also had newspaper articles and handouts, which we handed out across the Chatham Islands before the event. And the memorial event was really well attended and widely covered in the media, which showed an appetite of people locally to commemorate the disaster anniversary, and indicates an educative function of memorials to share messages of preparedness. And as a follow-up, a hui was organised a year later. So this event was organised with Ngāti Mutunga or Wharakouri Iwi Trust to communicate the thesis results. So this time around, the hui involved visiting Wāhi Tapu, so those are the sacred sites that were affected by the tsunami, karakia by kaumatua, the tribal elders, kai, so sharing a meal at the marae, and a kōrero about tsunami and discussion about what we've learned on that day. So the information was again really well received, with lots of discussion throughout the day and positive feedback and suggestions for community-led action. So one of the ideas that came out of this process was to have an app created for the island displaying the evacuation zones, safe gathering places, as well as other emergency equipment and potential funding avenues for this project. So we had a number of collective discussion points that came out of our experiences doing our 3 projects. So as our collective mihi at the outset of this presentation explored, we all have bicultural and multicultural heritage. Our experience across our projects is that Te Ao Māori and Te Ao academia can be bifurcating worlds with extremely different processes and expectations that do not always harmoniously coexist. The communities we engage with are culturally complex, so it's really important for us to learn and abide to local tikanga and kawa and draw from our multicultural heritage and braided knowledge and methodologies. Engagement activities with Māori communities and communities in general needs to be adaptive and flexible to suit community needs and priorities. Community buy-in was a key requirement for ensuring the success of our projects. While Emily and me were not members of the communities we were working with, we incorporated local stakeholders with mana, or authority and influence, as key drivers of the research, and kaumatua who understood the local tikanga, kawa and Mātauranga Māori of our communities. Incorporating community members as co-designers of the research was really important as well for producing work that was useful, usable and used, as well as aligning with community aspirations. The three projects share novel approaches which supported the koha gift of knowledge between scientists, emergency management agencies and Māori and multicultural communities to increase resilience for Māori communities. So this is really the ethics of reciprocity that we had going through our projects. But something we came across is the busy schedules of kaumatua, iwi representatives and school teachers and community members was really clear, and some really went beyond their responsibilities to invest time and energy engaging with us as researchers. As more Vision Mātauranga research projects arise across engineering and science fields, we, all science researchers involved in Māori and community engagement, need to be mindful of the limited capacity that communities have to engage with us and to be wary of inducing engagement fatigue or disengagement. So while we very much appreciated the extra contributions that people put forward, that just made it more important that we were giving them meaningful information for their communities. Receiving support from senior Māori and education researchers, both formally and informally throughout our projects, was extremely important for us as emerging researchers. We found tremendous value in the small but tight-knit network of emerging wahine researchers and other Māori and Indigenous researchers who were able to find the time to bounce ideas with us despite their very heavy workloads. Insider researchers such as Christy Lee are really valuable for their local contextual knowledge and pre-established relationships. While it presents a unique opportunity for the community to support their rangatahi and whanaunga or youth and their family members, and to engage with someone they are likely to know and trust, it also presents challenges. Insider researchers who are permanently connected to the community through whakapapa carry reputational risks both personally and professionally if research is not undertaken and shared in an appropriate manner. Emerging researchers and students in these positions require appropriate cultural support from experienced academics and cultural advisors who have navigated similar situations and pressures, of which there is not a huge amount in our academic institutions currently. So we have a range of recommendations that we put together that we think would help improve some of the representation of Māori wahine in the disaster and seismic fields. So a better integration of Te Ao Māori and generalised studies at schools and universities would be a good start. Creating nurturing and supportive environments that are co-designed by Māori teaching staff, emerging researchers and students would help to ensure that we're able to connect and reconnect with Te Ao Māori in an appropriate manner if that's what we wish to do through our research. A tuakana teina, or an older brother, sister and younger brother, sister academic mentoring system should be offered that's supported with time and resources from institutions or projects. So, you know, we found enormous value in being able to attend these hui and engage with more senior Māori and particularly Māori wahine academics, and it would just be wonderful to have more support for something that's had a big impact on us as researchers. Resourcing the formation of Māori research support groups across institutions, universities, CRIs, private research and disciplines, where we're able to connect, share and support each other. It's still quite a small group, so any opportunities we have for that are very much appreciated by us. Employing or contracting certified Te Reo translators and Māori cultural advisors. So these are really significant jobs, and translation is really something that is a direct process, and you need to have a lot of knowledge about it. So that's something that we find happens a lot, that it's sort of assumed that this is an additional or unpaid responsibility of emerging or established Māori academics to provide translation or offer cultural advice. And we're not always the most appropriate people to do this, particularly when we're working with communities who aren't our own communities. It does carry a lot of reputational risk for us, and it really is something that needs to be supported so it can be done correctly and meaningfully. Resourcing opportunities for emerging Māori researchers, particularly for us as well, for iwi representatives and community members who've made significant contributions to research, to participate in international Indigenous workshops and conferences. I think this is particularly important for community research. You know, it's not just our story. There's a lot of people who contribute to these stories and who have been absolutely important for these projects to go ahead. So yeah, being able to offer opportunities for them to come and tell the stories of their communities would be fantastic. And finally, initiating an international working group or network of Indigenous practitioners and educators familiar with both the specifics of their disciplines and best practice in Indigenous pedagogies and student mentorship. A lot of the problems that we're facing in our communities aren't just limited to here in Aotearoa. It's things that we're experiencing all over the world, particularly with disasters and climate change, earthquakes. So the ability to engage and participate in some of these international networks, I think, would be very mutually beneficial for everyone involved. So that was a brief summary, a quite fast, I think, summary of our projects and some of our aspirations for our research fields going forward. So thank you so much for listening. Does anyone have any questions?
Just while people are thinking of their questions, I'd just like to say thank you so much, Lucy, for presenting on all of those topics. There were some really amazing case studies there that some of you young Māori Wāhine researchers are undertaking, and some really good kind of things that people can kind of draw on in terms of maybe their research. And I also really like the way you kind of pulled out some of the key themes or the key issues or challenges or recommendations from some of that work as well. So that's kind of really nice to hear those. So yeah, I guess I'll throw it out there to anybody else in the audience who'd like to ask a question. I have a question myself, but I didn't really want to go first, but that's all right. Yeah, so I mean, I guess like maybe just thinking of the work that you're doing with Kura, I'm just wondering, some of these are quite short-term projects where you might receive a bit of funding to do a particular type of project, but I'm just wondering whether you have any thoughts about how you can kind of carry on some of those initiatives, or yeah, how that might be done.
I think I'm going to draw on Emily's work in particular here. I think Emily's work she's done with the pukapuka is a really great example of something that was born in a very local context, very specifically with Ngāti Kahungunu, but it's really aspirational in making it accessible for all of Aotearoa New Zealand to participate and use this, this book that she produced. And the participatory methods that she's used with very regular hui with the communities, a very equal partnership, I think provide a really, really good blueprint for the rest of us and how we can go about doing this research. You know, it's not just checking in with the communities, it's, you know, you're part of a working group that consists of the local communities and you're just part of this greater equation. So I think that's something that, you know, with the Kura stuff, that's an interesting one, because very often, or at least in my experience on my Kura projects, we're working very specifically with the schools, with their curriculum, with what their wider aspirations are for the year. So we're really trying to tailor what we do content-wise to the specific schools. But I don't think there's anything, any barrier really for taking some of the approaches, taking some of the content and, you know, offering that to another Kura, as long as they're interested. They're so busy. I think that finding a gap in the curriculum is probably the hardest thing about engaging with Kura, because they've got so much amazing stuff going on. Thanks, Julia.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, Raj has got a question.
So this is regarding the ethics, I mean, purely from the academic point of view. So it's part of the academic research as well. So what sort of ethics or ethics process do you need to get kind of full risk ethics, or it's just, so if you can tell a little bit about that, Lucy, that would be useful.
I mean, it depends. My projects have been low risk because they've been more working with the teachers and offering the curriculum within the classrooms. But even if it's low risk, we still make sure that we consider a lot of the potential ethical issues, because you are working in culturally sensitive environments. So, you know, I wouldn't want to go ahead with this research if we didn't have significant input from local community members, support from principals, support from teachers. And it's also dealing with things that can be quite difficult, I think, for students to deal with, particularly if they've had experiences with earthquakes or other natural hazards in the past. So we always make sure that we make it clear that there's a pathway for students to not participate if they don't want to participate, and that they have access to mental health and psychosocial support if they have, you know, if there's any adverse effects throughout the process of the research. But yeah, I think part of it is really just making sure you have the support of the community and respected members within that community to ensure that you're doing the research in the manner it needs to be done. I hope that helps or answers that question.
Yeah, that's really useful. Thank you.
Thank you. I just noticed that Brendan's just sent a message saying that he has, thank you for your presentation, that he has some questions, but they're having trouble with some of their Zoom audio, so he might email you some questions later.
Oh, I look forward to answering them, you know, typing them up instead of being on the spot, answering them over Skype. It's a bit easier. Any other questions from anyone? Happy to answer them offline as well, and, you know, email anything if anyone wants to reach out to me, or I'd be more than happy to put you in contact with Emily Campbell and Christy Lee if you have any specific questions that you want to direct to them.
Cool. I think maybe those are all the questions we've got today. But yeah, as Lucy says, yeah, she's always happy to kind of chat with people and answer questions. So I'm sure she'll welcome kind of any questions that you have, or if you see her at an event or something like that, she'd be happy to chat with you about some of the work that she's been doing. So yeah.
Thank you, everyone. Yeah, it's been great having the opportunity to talk about these projects, which we've been really, really passionate about, and are just very thankful for the funding and the support that we've had to do this work. So thank you to everyone who's been involved in that, and thank you very much for coming and listening to our seminar today.
Cool. Thank you very much, Lucy, and have a good Friday afternoon, everybody.
Ka kite.